Today, we're going to unravel a modern tragedy. I mean, how does a nation sitting on more oil than Saudi Arabia, a country that was once a beacon of wealth in Latin America, just completely collapse into one of the worst crises we've seen in our lifetime? It's a wild story. Let's get into it.
But here's the thing. To really get this story, we're not going to start at the beginning. We're actually going to start at the end. I want you to just imagine for a second waking up to this news just a couple of years from now.
A shocking headline, right? But at the same time, it almost feels inevitable, like the only way this could end. A foreign power stepping in to remove a head of state in South America. You know, the final dramatic act in a very long and painful saga. And that is the billion-dollar question, or maybe the trillion-barrel question. To answer it, we have to rewind the clock. We need to understand this powerful, almost invisible force that shaped Venezuela's destiny from the very, very beginning. It all boils down to this fascinating and honestly tragic economic idea, the resource curse. It's the concept that having incredible natural wealth, instead of being this amazing blessing, can actually be, well, a curse. Now, this is where it gets a little weird, a little counterintuitive. You'd think having all the oil in the world would be like winning the lottery, right? A golden ticket. But the resource curse says it's often the exact opposite. So how does that even work? Okay, this analogy just nails it. Think about it. When all that oil money started flowing, Venezuela basically stopped investing in anything else. No agriculture, no real industry, you name it. It became a one-trick pony, a single-dish chef. And you know what happens when the world's appetite for your one dish changes? You're left standing in an empty kitchen with nothing to serve. But man, for a long, long time, that one dish was the most popular thing on the planet. So let's rewind to that golden age, a time when Venezuela wasn't just doing well, it was literally the envy of the entire world. The rise was just absolutely meteoric. I mean, from the moment that Barroso II, blew its top and it sprayed oil for 9 straight days, the country's fate was sealed. In just a few decades, it went from being this rural, kind of sleepy coffee exporting nation to a global energy superpower.
Just let that number sink in for a second. Number 4. In 1950, the average Venezuelan was richer than the average person in Britain, Germany, or Italy. This wasn't just wealth, it was an economic miracle. So much so that Europeans were flocking to Venezuela looking for a better life. And this phrase, "Tá barato, dame dos," it means it's cheap, give me two. It perfectly captures the vibe. The currency, the bolivar, was so strong that the middle class would just hop on a plane to Miami for shopping sprees. The feeling was that the party would never, ever end. But, every great party eventually has a morning after. And oh boy, what a hangover it was. Because underneath all that glitter and wealth, the actual foundations of the economy were rotting away. Our single-dish chef was about to get a very rude awakening. So here's the fatal flaw. The government took control of, everything. It was so flush with oil cash, it didn't even need to tax its people, which sounds great, but it breaks that key link of accountability between the people and the state. It nationalized the oil industry, it borrowed billions and billions of dollars, all on the bet that the party would last forever. A truly fatal miscalculation. And this is the day the music stopped. On this day, after decades of rock-solid stability, the government was forced to devalue the currency. The whole dream of eternal wealth just evaporated overnight. The contrast is just staggering. Black Friday wasn't just some economic event, it was a deep psychological shock. The country that used to buy 2 of everything in Miami suddenly couldn't afford 1. And that economic pain, it planted the seeds for a political earthquake that was about to shake everything to its core. So the lingering crisis from the 80s and 90s created this huge political vacuum. And into that void steps this charismatic paratrooper, Hugo Chavez, promising a socialist revolution. And his policies, which were fueled by a temporary spike in oil prices, did reduce poverty for a bit, but they ultimately just doubled down on all the same old problems. And what followed was a complete and utter catastrophe.
After Chavez died, his successor, Nicolás Maduro, oversaw an economic collapse unlike almost anything we've seen in modern history outside of a literal war zone. Just look at this chart. Between 2013 and 2021, the economy shrank by about 80%. It's like the country's entire wealth was just erased.
To cover its debts, the government did what desperate governments do. They just printed money. Lots and lots of money. The result? Hyperinflation that hit an official rate of 130,000% in 1 year. Money became worthless paper. Your entire life savings, gone. Turned to dust. And this is the real human cost. Facing starvation, a healthcare system that had just crumbled, and absolutely no future. Nearly 8 million people fled the country. That's more than a quarter of the entire population. It created a refugee crisis bigger than Syria's at its peak. Which brings us full circle. Right back to that shocking headline in January 2026. With the country in an absolute freefall and this massive refugee crisis on its doorstep, the situation became a major security threat for the United States, and that led to the unthinkable. I mean, this slide lays out the whole 50-year tragedy in black and white. Just look at the columns. You go from a sovereign, oil-rich Saudi Venezuela in the 70s to a collapsed state totally dependent on Russia and China, to, finally, a nation under foreign administration, its oil industry managed by American companies, its currency replaced by the US dollar. The cycle of the resource curse is complete. So the path forward, as laid out by Washington, is this 3-step plan. First, stabilization. Get humanitarian aid in, secure the cities. Second, recovery, which is all about getting the oil flowing again to pay for reconstruction. And then finally, a transition, hopefully, back to some form of democracy.
And so, at the end of the day, this is the ultimate question. The very oil that promised to make Venezuela a paradise ended up fueling its total destruction. Now, with the old system completely shattered, Venezuela faces its biggest challenge yet, learning to be more than just a single dish chef. Can it finally build a future that isn't dependent on the very thing that ruined it?